And welcome back to another exciting Blender tutorial. Let's get started. All right, so today we're going to be finishing off just some polished stuff. You can see there's some things I've done in the scene that you don't, have in yours because I did it without you. I'm really sorry if you feel left out. I'm going to bring you up to speed though, so I'll tell you what I've done. And then after I've done that, we've kind of gone over it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do the animation. All right, now first couple of things that I did, I went through. Let me turn on here. I felt like our scene was just still too empty, and to really make a scene come to life, you really want to fill it out. You want to have a lot of interest, a lot of detail, but sometimes you don't have time to create, super intricate models. And that was definitely something I was running into with this project. I didn't have a lot of time to this project, but I wanted to still make it look really nice and give it a lot of detail. And you can see here that just by adding in a few more things, it's really helped bring that detail to life. So let's talk about what I did. I'll take it back into solid mode. So I just reused geometry that we've already built. Okay, so with my table, I just actually merged these together, but I just had a different, I just took the hollow table and duplicated it a couple of times and scaled them up to make some different ones here. Actually, this was just a little, I made an edge loop there and extruded that out to get that little lip. So I'm just reusing all the concepts that we've already talked about, like in the modeling tutorials at the beginning. These giant tube things sitting on the ground, they're just the pipes. I just brought them up and just changed the splines a little bit so they're more curvy and brought up the thickness. You remember we used the depth over here underneath the spline tab to change the size of the thickness of these objects. And so that's what I did. I just made them a bit thicker. I thought they really kind of helped fill out the scene and fill out the floor. And then what I did was I've got these down here. Now these objects are just, again, it's just this. It's just that outer rim thing duplicated, brought in and scaled down so it's flat and kind of overlapping the ground. Up here, very similar thing. I just took the inner ring elements and I duplicated those and just scaled them out until they were kind of intersecting. And then I scaled them down the Z so they were really thin. And then I applied just the same particle system to some of these. So I just used our panel particle system. So it's the exact same system that we've got going on our panel generator. I haven't even really tweaked the settings. I just kind of left it as is. And it just creates a lot more interest in the scene, just a lot more visual, stuff going on. So that's all I've done. I wanted to show you this shader. I thought it was kind of cool. I'll just give you a quick highlight of that. So you can see it creates this like nice kind of pipe effect. I'll get close to it here. It's just kind of a ribbed pipe thing. And I'm going to want to bring this over into Unreal as a material. But we'll talk about that in the next episodes, like how to bake this stuff out, how to actually kind of get something that's generated like this out. But I'll show you real quick how I made it. And I was playing around with the subsurface. I'm actually going to turn that off because the effect wasn't worth it. We can talk about subsurface scattering at another time when we've got something more appropriate for it. All right, so what did I do? I've just got a specular 0.148. I've got a roughness of 0.282. Just playing around, metallic was 0. Found this nice look. I've got kind of this like slight grayish brown color going on with it. And then this thing is coming from a bump map. And all I used was the checker texture node. So just to kind of show you how it's working, if I unplug this stuff, I think if I can do generated, it'll show you. Oh, it should, yeah, there we go. So you can see it just creates like a checker pattern. And I'm using a scale of 30.4 and piping that in just to a bump map node going into my normal. But then to get it so that it's like kind of going along the object, what they ended up doing was using the UV because splines kind of have they've got a set UV to them. And I will need to turn this into geometry and bake it out when I get to baking, but we'll go over that, in the next tutorials and stuff. I actually won't have this object when we go over baking out, by the way, just to flag this with you, because I've actually already done all those episodes and I've just come back because I wanted to add a bit more detail and talk about animation, because I decided it'd be better if we grouped all the Blender tutorials together and then have the Unreal stuff kind of separate at the end. And I was kind of doing it a bit out of order. So I fixed all that up. So we're going to do this detail stuff here in this episode and do our animation and stuff. But you'll see in the next couple of episodes, we won't have that these little details like the pipes and this actual kind of glowing stuff in our animation. But we don't need that for what we're talking about for the next few episodes. So don't worry, it's not a big deal. And then what we do is when we come back to the last episode where I'm bringing it all together in VR, then we will have all this stuff. So I've yet to do that episode. just so you know what's going on inside my crazy head. Yeah, so anyways, that's the gist of what's going on with that and how I got that to work. And then this mapping node, I used a scale of 15, and that if I drop this to 1, you can see this is what it was looking like before, but by changing the X to 15, it got me like that. And then if I put my Y to 0, it basically just got rid of the cross hatching. So it's just a straight up little, pipe rings. So yeah, it's cool. It's a nice little effect. It's subtle, whatever. All right. So the main topic of today is not that stuff. Now that you know all the things I've done, caught you up to speed. Oh, and yeah, this is a great point. I've been meaning to talk about this and I keep forgetting. Do you see how horrible things look all of a sudden? How like all the polygons look messed up? This is actually coming. You might run into this when using clipping, and we're changing our clipping all the time. If you've got your clip start set to the smallest value, which is this, it's like 0.000001, you're going to get this weird look. So you just bring your clip start up a little bit and like, I don't know, 0.001, let's just say, and it's going to go back to normal. So it's just, it just has trouble rendering it because you're saying that these clips, I don't know, it's just, don't worry about it. Just increase that number if you ever see that problem. It'll fix it for you. All right, cool. So today I'm going to talk about animation. I want to talk about how to get an animation going, in Eevee that's going to look cool. But then also, again, how do we do this in a way that's going to be compatible with a lot of external software? So again, a lot of these ideas, they're not just about Unreal. These are ideas that are really compatible for tons of different other types of software. If you want to get stuff out of Blender and get them into other programs so that you can use them, in different ways, it's really good to know all these tricks and all these tips and all this kind of stuff. So again, this is going to be, it's going to touch on a lot of stuff. So, all right, so animation. What do we want to animate? Let's talk about our scene. So I've scaled down my little hologram guy. That's kind of probably what you have, a little bit bigger. Let's talk about the dramatic moment of this scene. So the idea behind this scene was to have this thing appear, the little hologram with the table and stuff inside, the miniature version of our room, and then show something like coming up to the door. So we have this like bleeping kind of pulsing red light. So I want to have this thing animate on. I want to have my hologram kind of like expand up, like it scales up and kind of does a little bit of a rotation. So we see it, like it introduces itself. And then I want it to kind of like scale back down and slide off as we introduce this other object that's coming closer and closer and closer. So, like it's sort of this dynamically updating holographic display that's kind of moving the holograms around. And so now we could just, if we're just sticking straight in Blender, we could just animate the location, rotation, and scale of this little thing, and it would work fine, and we'd have what we want, and we can export it. But we won't be able to really do much with that if we want to get it out and get it into Unreal or, Unity or whatever. So the best way to do any kind of animation, if you're going to be taking it out of Blender, specifically into Unreal, you want to be using bones to do your animation. So you need to have an armature. So just like if you were going to animate a character, you're going to create a really detailed character armature that gives you the controls you want to make this sort of like puppet motion to animate your character object. You can actually use bones to animate very simple things that don't have any kind of bending or animation to them. And what that's going to do is it's going to give it a rig that Unreal can get a hold of and understand and look at the animation in a way that it can process. So if you just animated this and moved it around with just the base animation stuff, and then you tried to export this with its animation, it's going to try and export it in a way that it just isn't going to understand what's going on, and you're not going to see what you want. You're not going to get the animation over into Unreal in a really clean, efficient way. So let's do this. Let's jump into it. So I've got my little room object. And I'm going to, let me just turn on all my controls and stuff. And I'll start off, I'm gonna put my cursor where my selected object is. So cursor to selected. And then I'm gonna add, so Shift A, armature. And we'll just find where it stuck it. So it's in the hologram table. And that's fine, yeah, because this pertains to that, so that's cool. All right, now you won't see anything. And this is gonna be confusing at first because way back in episode 1, we changed our scale. So our unit scale is 0.01 as opposed to just 1, right? So that's actually affected this armature as we brought this in. The bone that we have in it is not, it's so tiny you can't see it. That's what's going on. So what you have to do is we need to go into edit mode. So with the armature selected, hit tab to enter edit mode, and then you go down to this bone tab, and it's going to list out all the different bones that we've got. We only have one bone at the moment. And you can see that the head, which is the base of the bone, and then the tail, which is the tip, they're like, it's only 0.01 away. So it's really, really small. So if we change this to a 1, immediately you're going to see the bone appear. And I'm going to go to transparent mode so you can really see it. So there we go. So we got a bone just on top of our object. And that's really all we need to do. Now we can name this. All right. So let's call this hollow room rig. And now what we want to do is grab we can leave edit mode, and we want to grab our hollow room object. We'll also grab our little table object, and then we want to shift select the bone itself. And then we want to go Control P with your mouse over here, okay? So we're setting a parent, that's what Control P does, and we want to set it with automatic weights. And that just automatically sets everything to be weighted to the bones in this armature based on their proximity to each other. So if we had like 10 different bones in this armature, every bit would be weighted a little differently depending on how close it is to each individual bone. So that way, if you grab one bone, it's going to control just these vertices, let's say, whereas it won't control anything over here. And if we've got a bone over here, it'll just control those. That's typically how a rig works. But in the way we're using it, we just want one bone and we want everything just equally parented to it. Now, we can find out if that's happened. So we can go over into edit mode for our object. We can click on one of these vertices and just pop out this drop-down menu. And if we go to right here, item at the top, you can see that it's listed out the vertex weights for this individual vertex. Now, what does that mean? Vertex weights, if you just go over to vertex paint, weight paint, sorry, you can see everything is red, right? Each individual vertex has a value now that's basically saying how much is it controlled by this. So like I could turn this value right down to like 0.2 for this one vertex, right? And now if I grab my bone, if I go into pose mode, or you can see actually if I go to weight paint mode, you can see now we've got this color difference. And so it's showing us, oh, hey, this is not as weighted towards this bone. So if I grab it and move it, it's not going to move it as much as everything else that's going to move, because everything else is like set to full red. So it's going to be moved 100% by this thing almost, whereas this bit's not. So it's actually going to distort. You can paint with this. So like, if we've got our weight paint, we open up our tools, we could then go in here and say, all right, I want to paint with a strength of like, 0.2. And I could go in here and select my vertices. You have to actually have them selected to paint. Oh, that's right. Weight. I got to change the weight. So strength is how much it affects it. So yeah, so I could like paint all this stuff out and go, okay, and I'm gonna do some stuff at 0 as well. So now these aren't going to be controlled at all, and whatever. I'm going way into the weeds with this. There's no need to explain all this yet because we don't really need to deform anything. But just so you get the concept of what's going on behind the scenes, if this is something that you're not familiar with, if I go to pose mode now, grab the bone, you'll see it's grabbing everything pretty equally except for those vertices that we've painted out. So anyways, you don't need to do that because, of course, that's not what we want to achieve with this model. So if you ever do have vertexes that don't match up, so like we've got this at 0.37 and stuff, you can actually grab one that you like. So this one, I'm going to turn this up to 1, and then you can hit A to select all and just click on this, and that's going to copy this value to all the others. So now if I select any of them, they're all 1. If I switch over to weight paint mode, it's full red. So let's just double check our other little object, and let's just see what we've got. Yeah, these are all set to 1 as well. So we're all good. All right, so both of these objects now are completely parented as an armature to this thing. So we can move this around and they're going to stay with it. Now that means we can animate this object. This bone is what we're going to put our animation into. Okay, so let's go ahead and think about our scene and think about when we want this to happen. Now, we already kind of played around with animating a camera earlier, but I'm going to just start fresh with this because I want to base it on this object. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of our animation that turns off our hollow room. So right here, we've got these keyframes. I'm going to go ahead and clear these keyframes off of this object. I'll just delete off those. Once I've deleted those keyframes, now it's not going to disappear on me and I can just think about my animation. So we're going to start the scene off, and I want this thing to kind of like kind of pop up and rotate. So what I can do is go over into pose mode. Now, whenever you're animating a bone, you select the armature, and then you need to go into pose mode, and that's how you're going to animate. Okay, so you want to make sure you're always animating in pose mode. So we go to pose mode, select the bone itself, and I'm going to start with scale. Now, let's say at frame 60, we want it to have a scale of 1. And then let's go back a little bit. Also, I'm going to rotate. I'm going to make this thing rotate, and I'll switch back to I'm going to go to my dope sheet for this because we'll need that. It'll make a little more sense in a minute. I'll just open up the summary so we can see everything that's going on. All right, I also want to do the rotation. So I'm going to hit I on rotation. Now we got this rotation set to quaternion. I think that's how you say it, quaternion, which is one of the different rotation types. There's all these different types. It's fine just to leave it at that. But if you've never seen that before, it's just a different type of rotation. So don't let it worry you too much. You can always change that. Anyways, so let's animate this. I'm going to go back to like frame 40. Okay, and I'm going to rotate it on the Z. I'm going to go around like maybe, I don't know, 180. Something like that. That'll be good. So I'm going to hit I to set a keyframe for this. You don't have to hover back over here either. You can just hit I in the window and then select the one that you want. So it's a bit quicker. Then we're going to go here to scale. Instead of scaling just fully, I'm actually just going to scale on the Z, and I'm bring this right down. Now, very important point. Never take a value to 0 with an armature if you're going to Unreal. If you take it to 0, it's going to cause all kinds of weird problems. We'll see what that looks like. So we'll just have a look now. We've got, so it like rotates on. It's pretty cool. We could also give it a slight kind of continuous rotation. That might be kind of nice. We could do that actually by adding another bone, so it could be continually rotating. That's not a bad idea. Let's do that. Let's stop the animation. We'll go to edit mode, and I'm just going to hit Shift D and grab on the Z. We've got 2 bones here. And I'm going to call this bone, instead of bone 001, I'll call this the master control. And I'll call this the secondary. Why not? Makes sense. I'm going to select my master controller, then I'm going to select my secondary controller, bring my mouse over to the viewport, hit Control P, and I'm going to parent them together, but I'm going to keep the offset so it doesn't stick the secondary bone up here at the top. Now I can rotate this one in pose mode, and it's going to rotate the whole thing. All right, so now I'll go to frame 1 for this guy, and I'm going to select my master controller, and I'm going to switch from quaternion rotation. I'm going to switch to XYZ Euler. So I'm going to rotate on the Z. Oh, no, not the Z. We're going to rotate on the Y. Yeah. So I'll set that to 0. I'll go I to set a keyframe. We'll go to the last frame. Boom. And we're going to just kind of go in the same direction that we do our big scale up. And I'll just kind of maybe rotate it, I don't know, that many times maybe. So I hit I, set a keyframe, just have a quick look at what that looks like. So you can see we kind of pop up like that. Now I do want to make sure that when we pop up that we're facing in the right direction. So let's, I'll grab my other bone, go to there, and I will rotate this guy, let's see, on the Y, just back a little bit like that. So yeah, cool. It's going a bit fast for me, so I can go to my master controller again, and there it is. Click it in here, not just in here. So click it over there, and then I'm going to grab that final keyframe. I'm going to grab this and just drag it out, just till I get that speed right. Yeah, it feels like kind of a display to me. All right, so it's slowly rotating. And then what we're going to have it do is, let's get to a good point. We have our expands out. It's rotating. And then maybe like at 120, let's have it go down and kind of back up. So, and I'll stop that rotation at this point right here. So I'll hit a keyframe for the master control right there. And I'm just going to delete those keyframes. So we kind of rotate to this point. Yeah, cool. And then what I'll do is, if you use your up and down arrows, you can jump between keyframes on your keypad. I'm going to then take it right here, and I will give my, what do I want to do? I'll keep my master control in the middle. So if I want to like rotate the whole system, I could do that. So I'm going to select my secondary controller, the smaller of the two, and I'm going to give myself a keyframe for the location and for the scale. And possibly, yeah, I won't do the rotation. I'm just going to do the location of the scale. And I'm going to go forward maybe, I don't know, just a few frames. And I'll take this and I'm going to scale it down. And I'm going to grab it on the X. And I'm going to bring it back So it's like right over there. That should be cool. All right. So let's hit a keyframe for that and for that. So it pops on and then goes zoom. And then we're gonna have that beep, 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 beep coming closer. It might be cool to keep the rotation up for a little bit. Or like when we do that zoom down, we could have like take the master controller and let's give that a keyframe. Go back to the secondary controller and jump to the next keyframe. That one, that's where it's at. And then let's rotate this, maybe just like 20 degrees roughly. That's going to give kind of a nice double motion to it. Okay, so to get this little red blip going, let's go ahead and in object mode, we're just going to create a new mesh UV sphere. We're going to scale it right down. We're just going to use a sphere to be our little object that's coming in. I'm just going to scale it down so it's roughly door size. I'm just going to leave it right there at the center. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my rig, and I'm going to actually just make a new bone in my armature to make this a part of it. So I'll just go back to the first frame, and I'm going to select my master controller, secondary controller. I'll just take my secondary controller and I'll go into edit mode, and I'll hit Shift D to duplicate. And this one I'm going to call our blip control. There we go. And just make sure we don't have any animation on that one. Yes, it's all blank. There's no colors. You can see, like, if I go to if we go to pose mode and click on bones, you get that yellow color if you've got animation on it, but blip control's got nothing, so it is all good. All right, great. Now let's this time we're gonna do something a little different with the way we parent it. So I'm gonna grab my sphere. I'll go ahead and call this our red blip. And I'm going to take the red blip, there it is, the rig. So red blip, control click the rig, and then I'm going to control P to parent. And we're going to have to change our weights a little bit. I'll go ahead and do automatic weights. And I'll show you what that's done for us. Now, red blip, if we go into it, we go into our little data tab, you can see it's got 3 different vertex groups now, and each one has a corresponding name to the different bones in our system. And that's what automatic weights does. Now, if we just focus in on this object, you'll see, if I go into, well, you can already see actually it's visibly deforming. And that's because each of these vertices has a little bit of all of them affecting it. So as this all animates, it's going to pull this thing apart, which we don't want. We just want it controlled by blip control, okay? So what we can do is we can just select any vertex on the object, and we can just zero out these that we don't want to have any control on. And then we can just go blip control, make that all the way to 1, and then hit A to select all, and just copy all 3 of these onto them. Now, if you select it, you'll notice that they all have the correct corresponding thing. We don't get that weird deformation. And now blip control is the only thing that is going to control this thing if we do animation. All right, so now let's go to back to our armature and go to pose mode. You notice you only get pose mode as an option if you have an armature selected. Okay, so let's just have a look at our animation and think about when we want this to move. I'm going to turn on simplify real quick because my machine's slowing down a bit. So yeah, max subdivision is set to 0. That'll just speed me up a little bit. So it zooms down. Okay, cool. Now let's take our blip control and let's figure out where we want this thing to be at the beginning. So when we zoom down, I want it to be kind of like straight off of this. So I'm going to hit G to grab and Shift Z because I don't want to move it on the Z axis. And I'm just going to bring it right out to like here maybe, just so it's lined up like that. Now we're getting a weird effect. We'll solve that in a second. All right, so it's just annoying me a little bit how much it's in the way. So I'm just going to take my blip control, just my whole rig actually, and we can just go under viewport displays under the armature tab here. And we can just change some of the things here. So like we can change this to stick, or maybe wire is going to be good. Stick will give us something to actually grab a hold of. So I'll stick with that for now. Stick with that. See what I did there? That was good. Okay. Let's see. All right, let's figure out what's going on here. We just have a vertex that's not cooperating. So let's just switch over into edit mode, select all the vertices, and let's go to weight paint and have a look at, yeah. So what happened is there's one down here that wasn't selected for some reason. So let's go to our vertexes. Let's select them all. And we can use our weight paint tool. So you go to tool in weight paint mode. This will automatically be here. I'm going to give it a weight of 1. And I'll just paint those vertexes. There you go. Now they're all sorted. Yeah. All right, so let's go back over to pose mode. A lot of different modes, flipping around constantly. All right. Let's go ahead and set a keyframe for this. So this is where we want this thing to start. So I'm going to hit I for, I can do it out here. I can do I and location rotation. I'm not going to change the scale on this guy. So just leave it like that. And you'll see what happens is as it goes down. Actually, you know what? I want it to be affected by the scale of this guy. So that'd be nice. So I want to parent this one to this one. So I need to go back to edit mode. And now one problem with doing it like this is I've got it scaled to the right point here, but at this point it's going to be too small. So we'll need to adjust that, but we can work that out in a minute. So let's go back to edit mode, and I'm going to select my secondary control, and then I'm going to shift select my blip control. Go over here and hit Control P, and I'm going to keep the offset. And now it will parent blip control underneath that one. So now if we go back to object mode or pose mode, we can watch and see. Yeah, cool. So it's going to drag it in. So now what we can do is we can get this thing positioned where we want it. So I'm going to zero it back out right there. And I will grab it. I'll hit G and Shift Z, and I'll just bring it forward out to right about here. That's good. And then I'm going to actually change the geometry a little bit. I'll go ahead and set a keyframe for this. And I'll select my red blip object and then go into edit mode for that and select, oh no, we're still in the, it's a little confusing when you've got an armature and you run in back and forth between things. There we go. I'm just going to scale that up and edit mode just so it's a little bit bigger. I'm also going to shade, we'll shade flat because we're going to use a hologram shader on it. All right, so back into our animation, back to the armature, back to pose mode. And so we scale down. All right, sweet. So I want to take this keyframe that I've got for my blip control, and I'm going to drag it right back over to here, I think. And we've got a secondary keyframe on this. I'm just going to delete that. Yeah, there we go. That's what's going on. All right, so it starts like way off over here. And so we'll have it turned off. Its visibility turned off, and we'll turn its visibility on when we get down to here. All right. Cool. And from this point right here, I need to get one of these other bones to get that point in the animation. There we go. I'm going to take this and I'm going to start moving him forward. So I'll hit a keyframe here, and what I'll do is I'll bring it forward, and then I'll hit grab Shift Z, and I'll just bring it all the way up to the door. And I'll hit I to set a keyframe there. So he's slowly coming towards the door. You like my sound effects? Great. Now, as it gets close, I thought it'd be cool if we had another point where the whole thing like scaled back up again. So I'm going to select my other bone here, and I'm going to hit location, rotation, and scale. Just set one for all of it. Bring him forward some, and then I'm going to scale him up and grab him back into the middle there a little bit. Hit a keyframe for those. So see what that looks like. And then right here, we're going to have all shut off. The hologram and stuff, the shader's going to all shut off, like we lose the lights of the holo table. All right, cool. Well, let's get a good camera move now that's going to suit this. And also, we want to get a little shader under this guy so that he's got a bit of color. Let's do that now, actually. We'll do that shader. So I'll go ahead and turn on our Eevee rendering, and I'll switch over to my shader editor, which we already have up, and I'll get red blip out. And we've got, so we already have some animation on our shader for the holo table. And I need to get out of pose mode again. All kinds of things disappear when you're in pose mode. It can be a real pain if you're not paying attention to what's going on. All right, I'm gonna drag this out a bit. All right, holo table, there it is. All right, we just need to adjust our keyframes that we had on this. Cool, so I'm gonna take this value and I wanna keep it on. So I'm gonna decide where do I want this all to turn off? So I want to make sure it's turning on just as it's starting to animate on. So let's go down to here, and I will grab the hologram. This is the two keyframes that kind of cue it turning on. So we'll just set those up there so we're fully on, and then I'll have it turn off. Yeah. So about 323. Grab these guys, pop them right there. There we go. And then the holo table as well, we should adjust. I know we've got a little bit of animation on the base table right here. So if I drag this up. Now, if you want to see two different things at once, you just need to turn off only selected. And that's going to show you all the keyframes in your scene. It can get a bit cluttered, so it's sort of can be a mode you don't want, but it's useful if you're trying to sync some stuff up like we are right now. So we want to sync up this shader here, which is holo base, with the shader hologram v2. So you can see these are the keyframes we want, and this holo table base shader is this stuff right here. So I'm going to grab these two keyframes, and I'm just going to line them up a little bit before this goes. Actually, I'll do it all the way before. So it's like the light comes on and then the hologram comes on. And I'll just grab these and I'll bring them over here so they kind of turn off corresponding with that. Great. All right. Now if I switch back over to my rendered mode, the table comes on. We've got our cool hologram effect. And then it shrinks back. And now we need to have a little blinking hologram on this thing. Great. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and assign a shader to this. Let's assign the same shader, the hologram v2, onto this. But now we want to make it sort of its own thing. So I'm going to click on this number here to make it a single user. So that meant there's 4 objects in our scene using this shader. And now I want to click that. It means that, okay, there's no longer 4 objects using this shader. This is a unique shader to just this object. I'm going to change the color to a red, a real vibrant red. And I got to remember to change my emission as well to a really vibrant red. And just change my angle so we can actually see this guy. Now I'm going to bring up my vibrancy so he's glowing a little bit more, maybe to 3. It gives me a little bit of glow, which is good. Now we want to modulate that glow. We want to actually have this thing kind of like pulsing, right? So an easy way to do that is actually to, let's see, come over here to our, so this shader right here, we'll just need one more value basically to multiply everything by. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to duplicate it. I'll grab our principal BSDF, move it out of the way a little bit. I'll drag this on. All right, I just need to grab another value node. So type in value, pop this here, pipe that into there. Now, of course, if this hits 0, it's going to disappear, and 1 will be, we're not doing anything to it. Now what we need to do is we just need to add a keyframe. Doesn't matter where it is. I'm just going to hit one here. And I'm going to switch over from my dope sheet. I'm going to go to the graph editor. Okay, so we've got that little keyframe there. And right here with this thing selected, with my default value, I've got this little option here called add modifier. I'm going to select the built-in function. This is great because you can add in curve modifiers to basically do all kinds of stuff to your animation. Let's see, I want to value offset it by 1 because I want to have the height of this thing reaching 1. Right now it's reaching 2 and it's going to 0. So I want it to bottom out at 0. And I only ever want it to go up to 1. So I'm going to bring what I'll do is I'll bring the amplitude down to 0.5. And I'll bring the value offset to 0.5. So that'll sit the base at 0 and its peak is going to be at 1. So it's going to modulate between basically 0 and 1. So the effect of that, if I just hit play, you'll see it kind of gives us this frantic kind of pulse, which looks really cool. Now, this particular modulation thing, this is going to be something we have to set up separately in Unreal. We can't really just, use this as is, but that's all right. We'll get to it. All right, so that's as far as we've got time for today. We've really covered how to do animation with bones and how to get things set up so that we can import them easily into Unreal. Now, there is another way of doing animation, but we'll cover that a little bit later. Now, as a special treat, I thought it might be really fun at this point, actually, to go ahead and premiere what the final render out of Eevee looks like. So I've gone ahead and finished the scene, I've rendered it out, and I've done my usual music and sound effects to it. So I thought it would be fun if we go ahead and premiere that now so you can see what it looks like, see where we're going. Yeah, I just thought it'd be a fun treat to do it at this point rather than waiting until the right end. So let's sit back, dim the lights, and enjoy the show. All right, and that's it. Yeah, I caved. I was really tempted by the whole idea of having someone on the other side of the door. I couldn't resist. Look at me. I'm a glutton for punishment. It's gonna add like a whole nother tutorial to this series. But hey, it's gonna be fun. Anyways, so yeah, we'll cover how to do that final little surprise ending with getting the door to open and putting the Mandalorian standing outside in the snow. Or the bright light, use your imagination. Anyways, we'll do that in a few episodes' time. We'll finish out the scene with that, along with actually how to animate cameras. We're going to cover how to have those camera cuts in between things. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a teaser about where we're going and how it's going to look when we're done. Kind of funny, I was really hammering on at the beginning about how this is going to be a shorter series than all the others, and it's like turning out to be like the longest series on the channel so far. So yeah, I'll just stop talking about how things are going to end up because clearly I've got no idea what I'm doing. Anyways, hope you're enjoying the ride. Hope you're having a lot of fun and hope you really enjoyed this episode. Feel free to like the video and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button if you want to find out when they're coming out. Hit the bell to get notifications when they drop and try and premiere every episode. And I'm trying to be there in chat so that we can interact a little bit. And yeah, looking forward to seeing where we can take this and where we're going to go from here. So please stay tuned and I will see you in the next episode. Have a great week. Bye.